above this crest is a smaller articular surface. Okay, this is the superior articular surface of the rib. Now this, what happens is that this articulates with the inferior articular facet, which is a demifacet usually, on the body of the thoracic vertebrae, above it. And this is the inferior articular facet, which is larger or broader, and it's for articulation with the superior articular facets of a corresponding vertebrae. So what happens is that if this is rib 2, then this one is going to articulate with the superior articular facet of rib 2, but it is the superior articular facet over here is going to articulate with the demifacet on the body of thoracic vertebra 1. Yes, that's what is going to happen. The inferior articular facet, which is a demifacet, causal facet, on the thoracic vertebra 1, and this for the corresponding vertebra actually. Now, moving away from the head, we get the neck. Yes, although this still, a flat bone, it still has a neck. Now, beyond that, you find this structure over here, where my pen outlines, is known as the tubercle. The tubercle of the rib. Now, the tubercle has an articular part and a non-articular part. The articular part is for articulating with the costal facet on the transverse process of the thoracic vertebra. The non-articular facet, which is rough, actually is for attachment to the costal transverse ligament, which we will see in our later sections. Now, when you go beyond that all the way, this is the body of the rib, Now, as you move from where we have the tubercle, as you come, you see it turns, gives a sharp turn. Over here is the angle of the rib, Now, this angle is where most of the fractures, of the rib tend to occur. Very important. Now, when we talk about rib, we can also call them costal bones. Now, these costal bones, therefore, that in between costal bones will be intercostal space. That will be there. Now, there are 12 pairs of ribs on the body. 12 pairs of ribs on the body. 12 pairs on either side. Have 12 pairs of ribs. Now, generally, we can have 3 groups of ribs, and it's based on whether or not they are true ribs or false ribs, or even floating ribs. If we're a true rib, that's from rib 1 all the way to rib number 7, okay, all the way to rib number 7, then you are having your own costal cartilage to connect to the sternum. And therefore, you have, these joints known as the, costochondral joints, connecting directly to the sternum. Now, if you are a false rib, then what happens is that's from rib 8 to rib 10. What happens is that they have a common, they join. They don't connect directly to the sternum by way of their own costal cartilage, but they connect together via a common costal cartilage, and then attach to the sternum indirectly. Now, these 2 ribs that you find them here are known as floating ribs or free ribs, or you can also call them vertebral ribs. Now, if you are a true rib, it can also be called costochondral ribs, or we also call you costosternal ribs. The name is from the vertebral, so vertebro-sternal or vertebro-costal ribs. And then if you are a false rib, we call it vertebrochondral rib. And then if you are a floating rib, we simply call it vertebral rib. Now, apart from this, we've seen the general features that a rib should possess. It should have a head, two articular facets, a crest, and what have you, body and angle. What happens is that there are some peculiar features with some ribs, and therefore some ribs are regarded as typical, others are regarded as atypical. Now, for the typical ribs, they range from rib number 3 to rib number 9. Rib 3 to rib number 9 are typical ribs, and therefore they possess all these features that we looked at. For rib 1, 2, 10, 11, and 12, they are regarded as atypical ribs. And the reason why we call rib 1, we regard rib 1 as atypical, is that it's very stout, it sharply curves. In fact, it's very strong. That is rib 1. And rib 1, in addition to having these things, what happens is that it has a single articular facet on the head. Now, this single articular facet is actually superior, superiorly oriented, a single articular facet. In addition, it has on its superior aspect, we have what we call grooves for the subclavian artery and subclavian vein, and in between them will be the scalene tubercle. But that's where the anterior scalene or scalenus anterior muscle actually inserts, and that makes it atypical. For rib 2, although it has 2 articular facets on the head, it has a roughened area on the superior aspect for the serratus anterior. So serratus anterior tuberosity is present on rib 2, rib number 2. On the superior aspect, there will be serratus anterior. Now, what happens is that, yes, although it also has, provides insertion point to serratus, posterior, usually we don't talk about because that one is not really prominent. Now, for ribs 10, 11, and 12, they have a single articular facet on the head, and this single articular facet is for articulation with, the corresponding rib, vertebrae. Now, in addition, what happens is that rib number 11 and 12, as you can see, rib number 11 and 12 do not have neck. That's one. They don't also have tubercles. They don't have neck. They don't also have tubercles for articulating with, the costal facets on the transverse process of the thoracic vertebrae. So these are the main things. But one thing is that, ribs are very important, so that we know that, yes, when there's a blow, usually the place that will get fractured will be the angle. Apart from that, when there's automobile accident, yes, apart from, yes, it's going to confer some protection to the thoracic viscera. What happens if there is a break in any of these ribs, usually rib number, 7, 8, and 9, they can actually pierce through the spleen, and then it's very, deadly. But we know the spleen is actually a reservoir for blood. So for now, these are the excepts as regards these flat bones which form the thoracic cage, which we've seen, and then the rib, and then of course the sternum. Thank you very much for your audience.